One of the things that the international community should do is say to Turkey, yes, we're going to help you, but we also want your facilitation and support in helping people across the border.
We can speak this morning to Sir Mark Lowcock, who was UN Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs until 2021, otherwise known as the Relief Chief. Good morning to you, Mark.
Hello.
How much can be done? What's the priority at the minute in terms of aid and assistance?
Well, as Andrew Mitchell just said, you have a roughly 72-hour window where you can save people buried under buildings. After that, it gets much harder. So we're sort of halfway through that window now. There's 50 countries have got that kind of capability there on their way. But most of that capability, obviously, Turkey has itself. So next day or so, couple of days, that's going to be the priority. After that, though, and already, in fact, it's possible that most of the loss of life still to come, and there could be quite a lot of loss of life still to come. It wouldn't surprise me if we end up with a death toll of 10 to 20,000 ultimately, a lot of them in Syria. A lot of that extra loss of life will come because people who are wounded or injured don't get adequate medical care, or because they freeze. It's really cold conditions, as Gabriel reported just now, or because they can't get adequate shelter, or because there's no electricity or water supplies, or, in the worst circumstances, there'll be some people who can't get enough to eat. So those will quickly become the biggest priorities.
And how confident can we be that aid that goes into that part of the world goes to the people who need it? Because it's not just Turkey, which obviously has its own issues under Erdogan, but of course it's into Syria, where that part of Syria is, I think, controlled by an Islamist group. There's the regime of Assad lurking behind it. There is a civil war effectively going on there. There's tension on the border. There's tension in that southern part of Turkey. Is that a huge problem here, that these people need help, but there may be political structures that stop that help arriving?
In Turkey, my expectation is the Turks will do a good job with a little bit of international help, relatively speaking, and a lot of the people who need help will get good quality help. As you say, it's a completely different story inside Syria. And we're already seeing that of the reported loss of life, maybe a third is inside Syria. My guess is it's probably higher than that. We just can't see it and we don't know. And a lot of the affected people are in parts of Syria where the government of Syria won't let you get to them. So the only way to reach them is through across the border from Turkey. The UN is allowed to use one border post. The Turks obviously can cross the border, in more places. But the problem is that the Turks will, understandably, rightly, be very preoccupied with their own problems, their own people, and it will be hard to get enough focus and attention on those people the other side of the border. So yes, you're right. I think that quickly will become the biggest problem that emerges from this tragedy.
And how do you solve that problem? Because you can't solve it at the UN level because of the political reasons why there is that tension in the area. Russia is aligned to Assad. Other countries, of course, not aligned to Assad. Can you fix that problem in the short term to enable aid to get to the people in Syria who need it?
Sometimes when you get a big crisis like this, you get a bit of political movement. So I hope there's a diplomatic process going on to try to persuade everybody that more border crossings should be allowed from Turkey into northwestern Syria, and the government of Syria should be, prevailed upon, particularly by their supporters and allies, the Russians and others, to let a bit more aid in from Damascus to that part of Syria. Unfortunately, the experience of the last 10 years, including my own experience dealing with the Russians and the Syrians in respect to northwest Syria from 2017 to 2021, does not make me very optimistic about that.
Because presumably they see them as enemies, and they're effective. Yes. Their view will be, well, we don't. Why should we care if our enemies are suffering? We don't want them to get any help.
They won't say that, but you'll be able to read that into the body language and the other things they don't say. So the best way of getting help to those people is the way that they've been helped over a lot of the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years, which is through that cross-border possibility from Turkey into Syria. But as I said just now, the problem is the Turks, who've played the leading international role in doing that over much of the last decade, will understandably and rightly be focused on their own problems. So one of the things that the international community should do is say to Turkey, yes, we're going to help you, but we also want your facilitation and support in helping people across the border.
Can we make that conditional? I mean, is it likely that people will say, we will help you, provided that some of this percentage of this goes across the border as well?
I would not advocate that. I don't think that kind of, I think that's a realistic or humane or appropriate thing to do. I think it's better to prevail upon people's humanity and understanding and recognition of their interest as well as the right thing to do.
And just finally, how is Britain when it comes to disasters like this? Are we still seen as a leading country when it comes to helping others? You know, obviously we have restricted our foreign aid budget over the last couple of years. Are we still seen as a leading light in this area?
No, we used to be, but we abolished one of the world's most highly regarded institutions in this area, the Department of International Development, and we slashed the side of the aid budget, and everybody else has seen that. So it's not that we can't do anything, we make no useful contribution, but it's, you know, we need to understand that we're no longer a leader in this space, and people are annoyed and irritated and listen to us less if we claim we are.
And do you think actually if that department had still existed, if our commitment was still what it was, we'd be doing more now? Is it as straightforward as that?
Yes, it's as straightforward as that. And, you know, Andrew Mitchell, who I know well and admire and respect, is trying to sort some of that out. But, you know, what we have now institutionally is a mess and a muddle. He's trying to sort it out. But the budget cuts have a huge effect as well.
Interesting stuff. And you know, we're talking about the importance of reshuffles, and that's a really good example of where when you change departmental structure, you get a different outcome. Mark, thank you for joining us this morning.
Pleasure.
That's really interesting. That's Sir Mark Lowcock, who was UN Under Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs until 2020.